Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz interview series with Director John Dorhauer of the Chicago Jazz Collective, Heisenberg Uncertainty Players. We caught up with him on May 23rd, 2020, as the COVID-19 pandemic was ramping up to talk about their latest 2020 CD, Gradient. This 17-piece Chicago area big band plays original compositions and arrangements from members of the group that are very talented. They were formed in 2011. They got a great story. Enjoy.
I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Oh, well, you know, we're hanging in here in this little David Lynch script we're all stuck in right now.
Probably as good of a description as I've heard of our current situation.
Right. As we get into this, before we get to your album, when, like maybe mid-March, when did you know, like with gigs getting canceled and things happening, that we were getting ready to enter a new world?
So we actually had 3 shows in early March. And none of them ended up being affected, but especially with the last one that we did, which was March 10th, like we were starting to get a sense of like, this is probably going to be the last time we'll be playing with each other for the foreseeable future. I would have been surprised if you told me after that gig we had on the 10th that 2 months from then, like there still would be no end in sight to when we might be able to come back together. But we kind of knew at the time that it was probably going to be closing up shop for a bit.
What have you been doing creatively to kind of keep yourself satisfied or satiated, so to speak?
Yeah, so I've still been writing. So I write all the music for the group. And there's been, I don't know, like probably at least 4 or 5 charts that I've done for the group. And some of them, like I intentionally wrote with the idea of like, I know it's probably going to be a while before this is read. Let's do something kind of adventurous and unique, and kind of like trying to use this as an opportunity for me to continue to push my boundaries as a writer. But one of the pieces I did was specifically for a remote video recording project where everybody in the band just took a cell phone video of themselves playing the part that I wrote for them. And then I've gotten all of them. I've almost finished the editing for that. We'll probably post it in a week or 2. So some stuff actually will see the light of day in the relatively near future. The other stuff, I mean, who knows, but at some point in time, it will get read and played.
So talk to me a little bit about how this group came about, the beginnings, and just kind of how things have evolved up to now.
The group started in 2011. So we've been around about 9 years now. And it was shortly after I graduated from grad school and realized that I both had enough charts that I had written to form a group devoted to all original music and also enough contacts that I could potentially form a big band devoted to that task. And was lucky enough to find enough solid musicians to make that work. And then ever since then, we've been pretty fortunate with having opportunities to perform. So we've been playing a monthly gig as a full 17-piece big band at a bar in Chicago ever since 2013. And so that has kind of given me a great outlet to bring in a bunch of new music. So I typically try to bring in 1 or 2 new things each month, and then the book has kind of developed from there. And from that, I think we've kind of like found our voice as a big band and me as a writer. And that's led to several other more unique performance opportunities and shows from there. But that's kind of the emergence or the development of the group in a nutshell.
So your latest album, Gradient, it has to be bittersweet. You got a new album coming out during a pandemic when people have more latitude to probably listen to music, but you can't back it up live. How do you feel about this release now?
Yeah, I mean, you make a great point there where, like, there are definite positives and definite drawbacks to it. I think for us, since being a 17-piece big band that does all original music, touring and going on the road isn't really an option for us. So while we definitely miss the opportunity to perform the music live to promote it, I mean, in the grand scheme of things, we'd only be playing for an audience here in Chicago. And so the fact that there's not as much music being put out with everything going on, we perhaps get a little bit more attention than we might otherwise on a national scale. I mean, there are certainly some elements of silver lining in the uniqueness of the situation for us.
Explain to me, like, what a live experience is with you guys. Like, say you come to Kansas City and you do a show. What does that feel like for you guys to do a live show?
Typically, when we do a live performance, especially one that's not at our monthly gig, I try to create a show that fits around a specific theme outside of just like, this is original jazz music. Because one thing that I learned early on in the band is there's not a very big market at all for original jazz big band music. And so, like, if, say, we were to come to Kansas City and do a show, it would have some sort of specific theme that we could market and then build the music around. And so, like, we've done performances in the past couple of years at places here in Chicago where I did arrangements of an entire album, and we would do the album cover to cover. But they're not jazz albums. So we did the Beatles' Abbey Road album, and then this past year we did Led Zeppelin's Houses of the Holy album. And so what I found is that, first of all, that creates a unique artistic challenge for me to create music that fits around that theme, but also it allows us to appeal to an audience in a market that we would otherwise have no exposure to. And so, like, fans of Led Zeppelin or the Beatles might come out and hear us, whereas they might have no interest in seeing a jazz big band. We did another one a few years ago where it was a composition, but each movement of the 9-movement suite was written as an homage to a baseball stadium that had been destroyed. And so with that, we were able to appeal to fans of baseball, but also like history and architecture as well. So I would try to come up with something that I thought would be appealing to our intended audience and potentially area, but then present music that is distinctly and uniquely ours and kind of reflects our voice, but within that specific focus.
We're going to eventually get out of this. My question to you is this: when we do get back to live music, what do you hope both the musician and the audience realizes from this time away?
I hope that there ends up being a renewed commitment to supporting live music. I think that, well, we often struggle to get people excited to come out to shows, but I don't think that's unique to us. I think that's something that, frankly, everybody in the jazz community goes through, where, and maybe it's different in different places, but in Chicago, there's a pretty vibrant and active jazz music scene. And I think there's this tendency to think, oh, well, I'd like to go see that show, but I can go see the next one, or I can go see a similar band do something similar at a similar venue on another night. And so, like, that kind of snowballs into, like, it's just so easy to make up the excuse not to go. And so my hope is that that becomes less prevalent, where there's kind of a renewed urgency to go out and see live music and support live music and live musicians. That being said, when live music is able to come back, it's really hard to say what that's going to look like. I imagine there's going to be some form of social distancing that will happen for a while, and who knows how long that will exist. And so, I mean, audiences by force of circumstances probably can't be that big. But for us as a 17-piece big band, like, I'm also curious, like, is it logistically possible for us to play? Like, it's not really feasible for us to all stay 6 feet apart from each other as a band. So at this point, I just don't know how that will look or when it will return to any form of normalcy.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, hey, man, John, thanks for taking some time out to talk about the band, the new album, and this strange new world we live in.
Sure. My pleasure. And thank you for the call.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest cats in Chicago, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to John on behalf of the band for his time, music, and story. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Davino in the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com, and for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.